All right, let's just start off with the headline. On Vice News, the headline reads, "Inside the Christian Nationalist Church where Proud Boys go to get baptized." That might sound like kind of a strange sentence to you, but as the episode goes on, you'll understand what it is we're talking about, which is this kind of weird confluence of a certain type of far-right extremism and another type of specifically religious far-right, we could say, extremism, and how those two are coming together and shaping each other. And this is a change that's happened even just in the past 2 or 3 years. And the person guiding us through all this is Tess Owen, who was a reporter on extremism at Vice News. And I say was because another thing you should know about this episode is we recorded this the day after Tess got laid off from Vice. If you weren't aware, I was also laid off from Vice back in November. And now essentially Vice, or Vice News as we know it, is essentially dead. It's gone. Essentially everybody's out of there. So the first part of this episode is a little bit of a post-mortem, but you'll understand why as we move through the episode, because some of the elements that Tess was reporting on in her earlier days and some of the things that I was reporting on too, have come together in a pretty strange way. But anyway, let's get into it. Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah? Everything's going great? Everything's normal?
Actually,
super
you know what? I'm actually feeling great.
Are you? Talk to me.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. What are you feeling?
Well, I can't gossip too much because for obvious reasons, but I was just laid off from Vice yesterday, and it's been a long time coming, and I feel like euphoric.
Really euphoric? That is that is a
euphoric,
feeling.
Yeah. I spoke to my dad yesterday evening, and he asked if I was on drugs because I sounded like I was doing so well. I wasn't. I was just euphoric. Yeah. I think I didn't really realize how stressed I've been about the situation at the former company. So yeah. It's been I was sad over the weekend when we knew it was coming, obviously, but now I'm just glad it's over. So
we're at Vice longer than I was. Is that right? When did you start?
Nearly 9 years. I started as an intern in 2015.
Yeah, you were there before me by a year, I would guess, maybe over a year. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah. But I feel like I kind of grieved it already. Like everything that has happened the last 6 months, I've sort of grieved this place. And obviously I was like completely shocked when we found out the news on Thursday, but I've been expecting it for about 6 weeks. So, the thing that's been hanging over me, I didn't realize how stressed it was making me. And now it's happened. I'm free.
Yo, I mean, look, this is not how I intended to start this, but I'm happy to keep rolling with it because this is actually important. I think something about Vice that was nice, I'm going to say was nice, is nice, whatever, and was terrible, depending on how you look at it, is people put a lot of themselves in there. A lot of themselves. It was not a job. I have had jobs before. This wasn't a job, only a job, right? Which is to say that if you wanted to, you could put so much more into it. Also, easily a collection of the smartest people I ever met. Easy.
Yeah. No, it was a great team. It was always about the people. Like from 2015 all the way through to 2024, like the people I've worked with and met along the way have been amazing. Yeah. Including like yourself. Like people have just been like brilliant and smart and curious and weird and made really, really good shit. And were treated like dirt by the people who ran the place. Oh, I should be careful actually with what I say. But it's just that's what was so sad, was just like the work was great, the people were great, and that's what was so sad about it ending.
Yeah. There's something that they say. I've been thinking about this a while. I think they say this about Velvet Underground. It's this group that like nobody listened to, but is this the group that hardly anybody listened to when they were actually active, but everybody who listened to them started a band?
I like that.
I feel like Vice is like that in a way where, look, this was already happening where people would hire Vice employees, like hire them away from Vice, to try to capture whatever the heck it was we were doing, which frankly, I don't think the formula is actually that difficult. It's basically just like, don't be whack. But I feel like there are a lot of people out there, or a lot of places out there, that are benefiting from people who've passed through the doors. And yeah, now everybody got cut loose. And so everybody got to go start their own band, I guess. I don't know.
And people loved to hate on Vice as well. Like a lot of people didn't really want to see us succeed, but people are like eulogizing now. I'm like, oh, and now you love us. Yeah. Now you're sorry to see us go. Wow. But it has been nice. People have been, it's been nice.
I have a theory about that, actually. About like people's emotional responses to Vice. This is a theory. My theory is that, like, for example, I've never seen anybody react as emotionally to Vice as to MSNBC or CNN or Fox or whatever. Whether something good or bad happens, it's just like kind of the visceral reaction that I see, particularly from younger people. By younger, I mean younger is in the news business means like people under 50. Like that qualifies. That qualifies as young, right? Let's remember this. But you've seen this. I'm sure you've seen this. Is the, oh my gosh, I remember when Vice used to be good, but then they got woke. We're gonna be talking about wokeness in a second. Yeah. I feel like there was something that Vice obviously did uniquely, especially in its early days. But then Vice like grew up. You know what I mean?
I also think that the company, in a way, evolved sort of with the culture, like the content and the jokes that were especially in the like the do's and don'ts, the Gavin McGinnis era. Mm-hmm. That kind of like that hipster racism that was kind of just honestly built into a lot of mass culture. It was just people realized that that's not really appropriate. That's not okay. And I think that was, it's just part of the way that the tone evolved, was also kind of the way that the culture evolved generally.
Yeah, no, for real. I think there were a lot of people who, look, culture evolved. Along with it, right. Vice evolved, because Vice was at one point pretty far in front of the culture. It was leading a lot of it. And then the culture evolved, the world evolved. They didn't. They're 40 years old. They're still thinking, they're still making the same jokes that they made in middle school. And then that's the people who are in the comments who are, oh man, I miss when Vice wasn't woke. I miss when Vice wasn't political. Fam, welcome to like 2009. Like, where were you? It's
right.
Things have been changing for a while, but it's like, it's this weird, the people who would say that, the people who would be in the comment section complaining about legitimately just the fact that, hey, we're talking about issues that affect women and issues that affect minorities, like legitimately angry about the fact that it's being spoken about in a way that isn't some weird exploitative like trauma porn. People would legitimately be mad about it. And it's this weird combination of somebody who got their blanket taken away and like the dude whose girlfriend dumped him like 10 years ago and he's still watching on Instagram like mad. Just bro.
It's a good metaphor. The
Yeah.
blanket being taken away.
Yeah, no, really, it really feels like, but it's like a bunch of like 40 some 45, 46-year-old dudes who somebody took their blanket away and they're still mad. Their security blanket
Right.
is gone.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, but I mean, that's part of the audience too. But speaking of some of the audience, some of the past, I feel like there's this weird full circle moment in what we're going to be talking about today. So, shall we jump over to it?
Sure. Yeah, and I've got to say, for that reason, I'm pretty proud. Like, this is the story we're talking about today. Was the last story that was published on the Vice News website, which I'm personally pretty proud of, because the story is about the Proud Boys, and the person who founded Vice, or one of the people who founded Vice, also founded the Proud Boys. So yeah, there is a sort of nice kind of full circle situation happening, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. This might be the last piece that's published on Vice.com. Like, this might be it.
It is. No, it is. They've announced that the site is closing. Yeah.
What does closing even mean?
Well, they shut down our ability to publish on it. I mean, they closed down the software, the CMS. So whether or not it actually sticks around and it ends up getting wiped, we don't know. The rumor obviously was that they were going to wipe the website entirely, and that was sort of what was reported. We still don't know if that's going to happen. If you have stuff, if you're somebody who is listening or watching this and you have articles or work on the website, archive it just in case. This
is a heck of an article to go out on, though, for you and for the site.
Thank you. It's sort of so I think last time I came on the Twitch stream with Vice, when we still had the Vice Twitch, we were talking about a story about how LA had become the epicenter for culture wars, and how there've been all of these instances of political violence and this like growing group of kind of culture warriors and Proud Boy types going from school board meeting to school board meeting and getting into brawls. Anyway, in the course of that reporting, a local researcher had just casually alluded to, like, oh yeah, the Proud Boy pastor. And I was like, sorry, come again. It's like, oh yeah, there's this guy, he has a church and a bunch of the Proud Boys go to it. So put that in my notes, and it came up again recently following the convoy, the God's Army convoy to the border. And I got leaked a private Telegram chat that this pastor was running. That had an active duty Navy SEAL in it and a bunch of Proud Boys in it. So I sort of used that as a jumping off point into the world of Hansel or Zame.
Yeah, man. So this is something. So, again, wild headline here. Unwoke church. Just can we pause to just? I know we haven't even gotten to the article yet. Can we pause to? I hesitate to say appreciate the strength of the brand. Let's be real here. Let's be real. This is one thing that I think that a lot of these far right movements have been extremely good at is branding, which is to say these phrases that don't really mean a lot, but despite not meaning a lot, they mean a whole lot. Like they dog whistles, essentially. So yes. Unwoke church. What the heck? I mean, you got to go to even understand what woke is. I feel so bad for like a ESL student or somebody who's waking up out of a coma because woke. Like what? Hold on. What are this? There's like 10 steps to be able to understand this. But unwoke church, and I'm thinking of things like CRT. I'm thinking of things like we'll see later on down here. Groomer, like how far that has come in becoming something that was actually a description of something to just I don't like you or I don't like that person. This is somebody I disagree with. And the branding is incredible. So saying unwoke church, signals so many things to so many different people. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also come to encapsulate the entire, this is like the crux of the culture war, right? It's like us versus them. They are the woke, we are the unwoke. And like, what does that even mean? And like, when you roll in religion or like Christian nationalism to it, it just gains even bigger dimensions. Like unwoke is like godly, unwoke is true American. Unwoke is everything that's not, woke is evil, woke is satanic, woke are forces trying to destroy America. So it actually, you're right, there's so much bound up just in that branding and that word, that term.
Which is, again, such an incredibly bizarre turn of phrase. I'm calling it a turn of phrase because the phrase has been turned on its head. Because if you look at what woke mean, I mean, woke was, you don't even have, frankly, yes, origins, Black American speech, or at least in its current, in the way that we're talking about it here, you didn't have to be Black. Frankly, all you had to do was listen to rap music. Like, you could be a white kid in Sweden and you would fully understand what woke meant because you would have heard it all of the time. And essentially what it meant was, listen, the things that you were being taught at school, a lot of the things that you were seeing on television, actually, they're extremely surface level, and it's difficult to understand them unless you actually go out and learn a little bit on your own, whether that's reading books, talking to your grandparents, whatever. So stay awakened to the fact that you're probably missing a lot of things, right? It's simple things, right? It's actually a very simple concept, but the fact that somebody has turned that on their head and made it into, like, you want to go back to sleep? Like, is sleep good?
Right.
So you got to say unwoke. It's incredibly bizarre. But again, branding, extremely strong. I realize we haven't even made it past the deck yet.
No, but I think it's really important to unpack these words because, June, you think about it, like the thing that they are pitting themselves against to, or this culture was pitting itself against, is a word that, like, was grounded in Black culture and was like, being aware of systematic injustice. And it's just like, that's what they're pitting themselves against, is like that entire, I think it's really important to talk about it. And I sometimes don't think about it enough because when I encounter those words.
So one thing we glossed over a little bit is Southern California, which is wild to think about. Also, all of these places, maybe this isn't as significant to you as it is to me, all of these places are right next to where I grew up.
Oh, really?
Oh, I'm from San Bernardino.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So you're right in the thick of it all.
Yeah, and so your name checking places like Pomona, California. Pomona is right down the way. Pomona, Chino, all these other places. So this is an interesting thing here because, okay, so what we're talking about again, the headline, inside the Christian Nationalist church where Proud Boys go to be baptized. And then, Southern California pastor leads an unwoke church where he prepares his followers to wage spiritual warfare. So this is all happening in Southern California, specifically this part right here is east of LA. There's also some things to talk about in San Diego, Orange County, but California, not the Midwest, not the Deep South, California. One of the bastions of liberal culture. What the heck is happening? So talk to me about this. Who's this person? A 44-year-old Southern California and self-identified Christian nationalist, calls himself a Christian nationalist, who leads Ecclesia, the unwoke church, and Ecclesia is spelled with two K's.
Yeah.
Not a C. No C's.
Yeah.
K's. What's happening here?
Okay, well, so first of all, the thing that, one of the surprising things, but maybe also not surprising, you tell me, honestly, from growing up there, but is that this area of California, these kind of more red counties, this is kind of turned into like a real hotbed of culture war stuff. And, while we used to see these scenes kind of maybe play out more like in Portland and Seattle, which also are like liberal enclaves with, surrounded by red counties, that like dynamic, that's kind of just, it's really been very intense around California in the last couple of years. And some of the worst political violence is like full on brawls, extremists showing up in tactical gear, no guns, but with knives, and just getting into fights outside school board meetings, at like anti-vax rallies, outside spas that have, policies accommodating trans clients, guests. So yeah, it's been a real hotbed of that. And Pastor Hansel, he's been on the scene for a while, to be clear. He has been at least linked with the Proud Boys and the far right way back, at least in 2017. And even back then, he was going to protest with, vests saying pastor on it. So he had this role already, but I think this role that he's playing now is particularly important, kind of given where we are. We can go into more of it, but like in terms of Christian nationalism and where the far right is headed generally.
Yeah. So let's read on. Let's find out about this place that you're talking about. So I'm just going to read this. So this is a service, and we're talking about a live stream here, right? So this is something that some people could watch, right? There's a service that's in person, but also live stream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Yeah. So people watching on Facebook, of course, Facebook. So the praying patriot who was baptized on this recent Sunday in February was named Andrew. Sitting in the bathtub in his clothes, he spoke into a microphone, his voice crackling with emotion. Andrew, who has Proud Boy insignia in his personal Telegram file, explained that he'd recently found God and learned that true masculinity is in Christ. I'm going to read the second part here, last part. I highlighted it. Christ had the biggest cojones, said Andrew. Being men of Christ is being real men. So let's be real men. There's a number of observations I would like to make here, Tess, if you will. First, I don't want to leave out the fact that my boy was in the bathtub. Man's in the bathtub in his clothes. Hey, listen, that's how you do your baptism. Go with God, actually. That's great. Christ had the biggest. That's a wild thing to say.
Yeah, enough people don't talk about Christ's balls,
You can take the reporter out of Vice. You cannot take the Vice out of the reporter, ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary. Clearly.
Clearly. I mean, not enough people talk about it.
But yo, what? Okay, you as a reporter could have included any number of quotes in here, but I'm gathering. I feel like you're putting something down. I'm trying to pick it up. You're highlighting this phrase for a reason. Why do you think it is exemplary or exemplifies the kind of rhetoric or the kind of mindset that somebody would talk about? Again, in a holy ceremony, my man is sitting in the bathtub. I want y'all to picture this. My man is sitting in the bathtub, speaking to the microphone, the dude's holding for him, and he speaks about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ's testicles. Why would somebody do this? Why is that important?
Well, so of course we've got to talk about the Proud Boys and what we know about the Proud Boys, which is a group known they call themselves Western chauvinists. They're known for being toxic masculinity, being horribly misogynist. They famously have a rule, no wanks, which when they are, to go through a certain initiation, they have to, abstain from masturbating from a certain distance of women. It's just a real thing. It's like their virility is really important. They're like formed in opposition to, around this idea that like men are too sensitive these days, that they're coming like overly feminized, that women are taking over, that, you know, they are like the reactionary kind of embodiment to that. So this is why it's important to talk about Jesus Christ's testicles when you're getting baptized.
Right. This is all about, again, an idea that something has been taken away from men, and that men, and not something has been taken away from men that men are entitled to, and thus we need to take that back. I'm gonna speak as a dude here. That we need to take that back. There's something that's been taken away from us unjustly, and if we only take that back, things will be good like they were in the past. Which past? I don't know, but this is the idea, the way to move. That is the way to move forward. So, okay. And of course you have the big pull quote. Amazing. So this harnessed a rising tide. I'm reading from your article again here. It's harnessed this church has harnessed the rising tide of Christian nationalism, which claims that America is a fundamentally Christian nation, and the patriots are in a spiritual war against nefarious and even satanic forces who want to subvert the country's cultural and political institutions. And then the pastor tells his followers, Christian nationalists just want to go back to the way it was, Christian values and Christian ethics. This is now, in a different language, in a different way, dovetailing a little bit with the Make America Great Again idea, right? Yeah. The idea that there is something that not only has been lost, but something has been taken away, which seems a little, it seems like it would be less attractive to some, more attractive to others, but yeah, talk to me about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, Christian nationalism has surged with Trump, right? And where it's gone from like, not only has something been taken away or something been lost, but in order to, it's gone even further to be like, you know, in order to restore God's kingdom, we need to bring it back, or to ensure the return of Christ, we need to bring it back. So in this kind of framework, you know, anything that's deemed not like the way it was, or woke, quote woke, or like liberal, you know, if that's like LGBTQ rights, or teaching about slavery in schools, or I'm trying to think of other examples. There's so many other examples. You know, having books that include gay parents in school libraries, like all of this is like is an anathema to what they're trying to do.
Yeah, but let's jump down to the next thing. Again, catchphrases abound. But in a recent prayer broadcast on the streaming platform Rumble, which is something that some people may not be familiar with, you can talk about that in a second. But he said, "We cannot." So this is fundraising. I'm assuming he's fundraising, but also, you know, preaching, saying we cannot beat these globalists or this global homo machine alone. Globalist is one thing. Global homo machine. Global homo is a incredible phrase. And by the way, when I say incredible, obviously this is not a phrase that I'm endorsing. Anybody say ever. Global homo, globalists, both of these phrases, I feel like I've heard them before. Maybe from somebody more prominent. Where are these things coming from?
Well, globalist is often used as an anti-Semitic dog whistle, and it's become very it's been laundered into the mainstream massively. And so not everyone who says globalist necessarily means Jewish, you know, a cabal of Jewish people, but that is often used that way. Now it's kind of been broadened to suggest a kind of, it's Marxist. It's still a nefarious cabal, to be clear. It's a kind of it's not always specifically Jewish, but it's definitely, it carries that implication at the same time. Yeah. Globo Homo now. So that's now like the purpose of. So it's like these Marxist globalists who are trying to destroy America from within by making kids read gay books. You know, this is what the Globo Homo machine is.
This is, I feel like I've mostly said this or seen this. I'm picturing Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if he's the person who popularized this. I mean, you tell me. Thank you for being deeper in this world than I am, because I don't want to be there. You're in there bringing it back to us. But am I right? Did Alex Jones help popularize this, mainstream it? I suppose.
Yeah. The crazy thing actually is that I've unfortunately been so sort of deep into this world that I'm like, yeah, Globo Homo machine. I don't really like it's. I don't really. I'm like, oh, who else has been saying that? Because I see it everywhere these days.
Right.
But you're right. You're right that it is a very Alex Jonesian phrase. Yes, someone saying the books are making the frogs gay. That's sort of, yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm also sad. Thank you, everyone in chat, for sticking along with this. I'm also deeply sad that there are people who were able to like recognize, oh yes, Alex Jones, yes, making the frogs gay. Like, for you all who are watching this and listening to this, I wish you didn't know these things, because I feel like your life would be better. But you're here with us, and so now you do. We have to know these things. Now you have to know them too. That is, I suppose, the entire proposition of news. I suppose I know this. Now you're going to know it as well. Stay woke. So, yeah. Okay. So here's where all of this gets interesting, because, interesting, but also I think something that we should really be paying attention to is that thus far you're describing, this article is describing some strange things, truly some hateful things, as we'll see, that are associated with, let's just say, let's call it a fringe for now. Let's call it fringe, ultra-right Christian nationalists. Okay. We can broadly categorize that under religious thought, right? Let's be as diplomatic as we can and call it thought, right? Then Proud Boys, which those two things have not been entirely incompatible, but I think most people think of Proud Boys as somebody who shows up to fight. Like shows up to a protest. Oh, I saw that this is gonna be like a pride parade. Let's go fuck it up. Let's go throw a brick. For no other reason that you can get some attention. That is fundamentally different from what most of us think of what a church would do. Like, they don't really seem like they would be interested in each other. But as you and others, but as you're laying out here, you're showing that, again, I'll read from here. The armed conflict location and event data project, which tracks extremism and unrest worldwide, has found that since the January 6th Capitol riot, Proud Boys have been more likely to appear in public alongside Christian nationalist and conservative groups compared to years prior to 2021, when they often align themselves with militias. Tell me about this. This is interesting. This is an interesting development.
So I think one of the biggest development with the Proud Boys since January 6th is that they pivoted away from these big national rallies, and they've dug themselves into their communities and local culture war issues. So they've aligned with local parents' rights groups around, showing up to their school board meetings. They're digging themselves in, they're ingratiating themselves, and they're building these inroads into the fringes of politics by doing this. And at the same time, with the Christian nationalist elements, it kind of provides them with spiritual cover. So it's not just like, oh, you're not just showing up to a protest and you're going to beat up a bunch of leftists because you don't like them. It's like you're showing up to a protest to beat up a bunch of leftists because those leftists are agents of evil. That they are promoting Satanism, and if we go beat them up, we're doing God's work. We're warriors, And so I think that's the dangerous development when when the kind of culture war activities, or violence gets put into like a religious framework. So not only is it getting more mainstreamed, but they're getting this spiritual cover and justification.
That's what I was about to ask you, because I think it's important to clarify what we mean here by dangerous. So let me know if I'm accurately understanding what you're saying here. It's not necessarily dangerous just because there's violence, right? That somebody is showing up to fight. Because this is something, and again, this is something that I have seen. You have seen a lot of people who have reported on anything, frankly, we could say pre-Trump election, but certainly post it, that people would feel like they can show up to just an event, like an event in the park, and harass people and like physically harass them. This was something that existed, but as we'll see later, that's not always palatable to everybody. But what you're saying, if I'm understanding what you're saying right here, is that the part that makes this dangerous is not just the physical violence. It is that they're gaining a legitimacy, whereas they might not have had it before. Whereas some people may see this, and before, when they might have said, yo, that's a bunch of jerks. Why are they doing that? Like, I don't, people are wearing rainbow stuff and I don't really like that, but you shouldn't hit them. But, oh, you're hitting them for God? Okay, different story. I see. Maybe we're on board now. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and I think that also, like, kind of that. I don't have the polling to hand. I didn't have the story, but there have been some really alarming polling showing the number of people on the right who feel like violence is justified to get the country back on track. And so I think that's kind of part of the same conversation. Like the rising Christian nationalism, the mainstreaming of these guys is like, we're, to get things back to how we want them, to make America great again, maybe we're going to have to turn to violence.
Yeah. Let's not be naive and recognize that violence has been certainly used in the name of religion before. So this is not an entirely new playbook, but it is being used in an interesting way here, I suppose. In a way that it's evolved over the past few years, really 2-3 years.
Right, but I mean, because we've seen this before, because we know that like religion plus like rabid nationalism is not necessarily a really good combination historically around the world. It's just not.
No, we've got a lot of examples that show that it's really bad, actually.
Really bad, and specifically because people feel like they are doing God's bidding. They feel like they, when their political beliefs, like their extreme political beliefs, intermingle with their spiritual beliefs. That's a really dangerous combination.
Yeah. So let's come back to the article here. I mean, you tell me if there's some places you want to stop here. But
first of all, shout out to the researchers. I was going to say a quick shout out to the researchers, who I'm not going to name, but just there are a lot of people in these communities who go out of their way, who put themselves at risk to monitor and leak stuff like this to reporters. So shout out to them. Yeah.
That is actually extremely worth saying. You've certainly had more contact with this than me. But I've spoken to, I'm trying to think of how to say this without directly referencing anybody. And part of the reason I'm struggling because this is difficult, right? Because so I'll just say that I have spoken to some people who have been involved in just the sort of research that you're talking about, leaking, reporting on things. And the reason I'm being very careful about this right now is because I can't say their name. I cannot say their names. I do not want to really give any sort of identifying information because they are doing it at great personal risk to themselves. Because, I'm out here talking about it publicly and I'm pretty removed from it. When you're in contact with these people, I'll just say this. We're going to see what people are willing to say and do publicly. That is very different from what people go further when they know there's no public audience.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a really good point, is that a lot of this really, thank you for mentioning that a lot of this does truly stand on the shoulders of people who are doing work for which they cannot be thanked publicly. So, yeah.
Right.
If anybody's seeing this or hearing it, thank you for real, because we need to know this, but I ain't getting into these things. It ain't gonna work. But yeah, so let's see. As I mentioned, so this pastor uses the Telegram channel to broadcast his upcoming appearances. Appearance is a wild phrase, but it makes sense. He said he'd be at a school board meeting to protest LGBTQ inclusive policies, and these appearances often devolve into violent brawls. Before he went to a high school in Chino is not far from me, man, wrote, "This is grooming behavior," and yeah, again, please pray for, and then he wrote, "Please pray for me and the men that are to be my security." I don't know if anybody has ever been to a school board meeting before. Let me just say this. You have to be doing some incredibly boisterous and uncouth behavior to need security at a school board meeting. This is not a collection of MMA fighters at your local school board meeting. These are some quiet, docile. The worst thing that happened to you is somebody might spill coffee on themselves. That's it. You know what I mean? Maybe some Dr. Pepper if things get real hot. You don't need security, my brother. You don't need security unless, again, you're going in with the intent of, you say, violent brawl. Again, wild. But going to school board meetings that I'm assuming you tell me you've done the reporting here. I'm assuming the gentleman does not have a child in this school board, in this school district.
I don't believe so.
But this is a common thing, is people going to school board meetings that they don't actually live in. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's the same group of mostly guys going from, well, there are quite a lot of women as well, going from school board to school board.
Lean in.
In the area, and and this is what they do. They get into fights. They show up and yell at people. They terrorize people who actually do have kids going to their schools.
Yeah. So here we go. He also posts links to, he also posts,
I love the things that you've highlighted.
He also posts links to his sermons on Rumble and DLive. The latter platform allows him to, so I'm reading again from your article. He also posts links to his sermons on Rumble and DLive. The latter platform allows him to collect donations in the forms of tokens purchased or Bitcoin. That is interesting. Donations. Ahead of one sermon in December, he advised the other members of the chat to avoid using Proud Boy slogans. He told people to avoid using Proud Boy slogans such as POYB, proud of your boy, and Uhuru, which is a Swahili word meaning freedom that Proud Boys have co-opted as their rallying cry. Once again, incredible that Proud Boys have co-opted a Swahili word. Just, again, the branding, phenomenal. By the way, if that word sounds at all familiar to you, and you're not a Proud Boy, and you're not deeply in the darkest recesses of the internet like Tess, no offense, and myself to a lesser degree, and you don't speak Swahili, there might be a reason for that. The first Star Trek series, this is a character who was on there. Her name came from, so this is a black woman who was on there on the first Star Trek series. Her name came from the Swahili word uhuru, meaning freedom, right? So
wow.
Again, I'm not at all saying that this is where the Proud Boys found that. Wouldn't be shocked if there was some just huge Trek, like internet nerd Trekkie who was really into Star Trek and then pulled it from there. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that some Americans may find this familiar for a very bizarre reason. Yeah.
Wow.
Nicholas States in 1990. She wrote a book and this same person wrote a book in 1994 called Beyond Uhura. So yeah.
That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Like the band Black Uhuru. So it's a also very possible potential source for this. I don't know.
How does it end up as a plan for racial diversity? So you're saying that it's potentially a reaction or a mocking racial diversity in Star Trek?
I'm not necessarily saying that. So which is to say that, okay, why are Proud Boys using the phrase uhuru? And so again, this is backing up. In the original Star Trek, and I gotta admit here, I'm not a huge Trekkie. I'm not a huge science fiction nerd or anything like that. But one of the interesting things about the original Star Trek, which again originated in the 60s, it was in the 60s, was that it was an incredibly diverse cast. They had an Asian dude on there. They had a black woman on there, but not a black woman who was like out back sweeping. She, like, let's look at just a slight description of what her position was. As a character, she is a polyglot translator, communications officer who specializes in linguistics, cryptography, philology. Do y'all even know what that means? Philology? I had to mouse over to double check. So, which is to say that the view of the sort of utopian view of the future that Star Trek had was that we are going to get beyond all of, and this is maybe a little bit naive, but we're all going to get beyond the race stuff. We're going to get beyond the politics stuff. We're going to get beyond this Cold War stuff that we're going through. Man, in the future, we're all going to have that solved. And we're just going to be out there exploring and vibing and like meeting with alien people who haven't quite figured that stuff out yet. And we're going to, we're going to impart our knowledge. And maybe we're going to learn something in the process, whatever. Also, Kirk is going to be just macking on every single woman out there, which is, we're just going to leave the whole weird, like, we're going to leave that aside. It wasn't perfect, but that's to say, it was a pretty groundbreaking show for a lot of people in that it showed a black woman in a position of power and nobody really batted an eye. And as Ben is mentioning in the chat, Kirk kissed Uhura, which was maybe one of the first, it was certainly the most well-remembered interracial kisses on television. And they just did it. And it wasn't even like a peck on the cheek. My man went for it. And a lot of people were extremely upset. And so this is all to say that this is where some people may remember this word, again, slightly different word because it's Uhura, right, instead of Uhuru, but that's where the word came from. And Beatmaster's saying this, King, not confirmed, but this Beatmaster saying Martin Luther King asked Nichols to stay in the show because of representation. She wanted to leave early on. Really? Is that true? Man, I'll believe it. Look, I'll believe it. This is all to say that the word it's got some meaning behind it, right? Banned Black Uhuru, right? She was reading a book. She was reading a book called Uhuru, which she had with her the day that she read for the part of the character, right? And Nichelle Nichols is the name of the actual actress, right? So anyway, that's all to say that I'm not necessarily
I
saying
love a layered meaning. I love a layered meaning.
That's not to say that it's necessarily a reference to Star Trek as such, but I certainly think it's probably fair to assume that there is some level of irony intended in, let's use a Swahili word for freedom, right? Also, again, giving a little bit of cover to, hey, look, we're not a bunch of racists. We're using a black word to describe all we want is freedom.
Right.
What's the matter with that? Cover.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's come back to it. Yeah, because then they can't call it racist. Yeah. But anyway, yes, that is the grooming thing. Let's even step away from the article a little bit and talk about this. The phrase grooming, I have seen more recently than ever. I hesitate to frame the conversation like this, but it feels intentional. It feels intentional. What are you seeing there? When did you first start seeing this word used so much?
When was it? It was last year. It was 2022. It was like, I want to say February, March 2022. The CRT stuff had fallen apart. Like that. Like this CRT stuff was too complicated. Like the whole critical race theory. Like the vaccines had gone away. Election was over. The CRT was just like not really resonating with people, I think, in the way that the GOP and the fringes like hoped. It's complicated. It still kind of sounds like you're saying racist stuff when you're talking about it. People don't want to be seen as saying explicitly racist, saying racist stuff, even if they're saying it. But grooming was like, okay, this is the thing that's going to get people, because first of all, it just goes into like this empty slogan of like, we got to protect the kids. We just got to protect the kids, full stop. Who we're going to protect them from. And then there's a litany of things you got to protect them from, whether it's like, okay, first it's Disney. Okay, Disney, oh my God, there's a same-sex kiss in the new Buzz Lightyear movie. Is that grooming? Yeah, it's grooming. It's grooming because it's teaching kids. Because by teaching kids about that gay people exist, you're teaching kids about sex. That's what they argue. And then it's just a little bit further, but that's their kind of bottom line, that basically exposing kids to anything that involves gay people or talks about being gay or talks about being trans, that means sex. And so that's kind of been this narrative that has gripped the far right and the fringes for the last 2 years. Yeah.
Right. Which is to say that it means sex is that it means sexual abuse of children.
Yeah. That you're grooming kids, that you're trying to, you're grooming kids into having a sexual orientation or making them think about sex, and you're forcing them to maybe think about being gay. That's the idea. And then grooming, and also in the sense that you can then essentially sexually assault children, not only mentally make them, turn them gay or whatever, turn them queer, turn them trans, is that, oh, you're a pedophile, you actually want to have sex with children. It's partly that. Sometimes it's that, but it's also this idea. It's that, but it's also idea of like a mass indoctrination to like ruin the children, to like ruin the future generations. So it's both. It's used both ways, where it's like, oh, there's something like this teacher who has a pride badge that they wear to school is going to assault children, and as well as like, oh, we're brainwashing an entire generation, and this is how the globo homos are trying to win by destroying America, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So let's let's come back to this. Sorry. No, it's a lot. It's a lot. Let's come back to this. So, okay. So you actually tried to interview him.
I did, and I did really try to get in touch with him. I spoke to his brother even, and tried to be like, hey, can you give me a call? He wasn't interested in talking to me. The one thing I desperately tried to independently verify was his involvement in the adult film industry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know this is in the article, but that's a interesting sentence. Once again, shout out to Vice. What? The pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
The pastor claims that he was a porn producer at some point. He was he briefly appeared in a documentary series that was made by a fundamentalist Christian group, about like the perils of porn, and he was in it briefly and identified as a porn producer, former porn producer. So when I say I tried, I desperately tried to verify this. I mean, I tried.
No, okay. Look, all right. Look, walk us. Come on. Walk us through this. What'd you do?
Okay, I estimated, because I found other stuff about him. I've estimated that probably his time in the industry was probably 2000 to 2005. That's kind of where I bookmarked it. So okay. I found out there is basically an IMDb for porn, which is not something I was aware of. Couldn't find him on there. I've searched every single variation of his name I could possibly find. I did find a MySpace. I found his MySpace because I was like, okay, where would he have been hanging out in that time? Yeah. MySpace. So I did find his MySpace. So I was going through his friends. I'm like, let's see if anyone here is looks like. I did find some people who looked like maybe they were in, who were in porn, but they were reformed. Like they had found God. So I was like, oh, maybe there's a community of them. I tried to get into that. I also noticed a real overlap with like the MMA community. So I was like, okay, is there like an MMA porn crossover? I know. I spoke to somebody.
No. Stop. Tess, you have to stop jumping ahead because you keep saying things that we need to talk about. Okay. What? Hold on. Wait, is there a porn to MMA pipeline? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what I started wondering. So I started then looking into, and I also spoke to a guy. I spoke to another reporter who had briefly worked in the adult film industry himself and has since covered the industry. So I spoke to him. He worked in the industry. I was trying to figure out, is it like media? If you're working in media for certain years, like everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
So I asked him, I was like, can you, he asked around people, he sent his picture out. I was specifically asking about the MMA, two things, like the possible MMA porn crossover and the porn to Jesus crossover. Does it ring any bells?
I'm sorry. Porn to Jesus, I understand. There's like somehow there's a logical thing is like you're doing something that people look down upon and then Jesus. Okay. You haven't asked my question. Forgive me. You haven't asked my question yet of like people doing porn and then deciding they want to get in a cage and hit people. Is this what you're saying?
See, to me, I didn't even think it was weird. I thought it made actually a lot of sense that those worlds would sort of overlap. It's kind of performative. You can kind of imagine, and there is a crossover. You can imagine some of the same kind of guys, especially the guy, being involved in. It just made sense to me logically. Maybe that's weird. Maybe that shouldn't have made sense to me, but it is.
No, Tess, no. I don't understand. Wait, so explain. What were you finding? You were finding that there were former porn performers who were now fighters, or reverse?
So there is a world. So there are some people, and this reporter I spoke to was very helpful. He gave me some names, so I started looking into that kind of crossover. Couldn't find anything.
Okay.
I noticed on the MySpace that this guy Pastor Hansel was very involved in this MMA world. He followed a lot of people. They followed a lot of him. He's Filipino. I also know that there's a big Filipino MMA community. in that part of California. So I was like, okay, maybe. So where does the porn factor come in? Like, where is there also like a, but anyway, I couldn't figure it out. And so then my assumption is that either he is over exaggerating his involvement for clout, or it was like a super budget operation and nobody really knew about it.
It certainly makes a good backstory.
Yeah. So it's like he had a Substack of porn, it's like.
Yeah, I was a porn producer, and then I found God, and so I'm a sinner, and I can now lead you all. Yeah, no, it's a great backstory. Maybe true.
Yeah.
But you weren't able to identify it, I see.
And also, understandably, it's really hard to get in touch. I tried to get in touch with like a lot of people who were in the business around that time, and it's really hard to find their contact information. It's like, understand completely. It makes so much sense. It makes all the sense in the world. But I was like, this is crazy how hard this is.
Man.
So I never thought it was the first time that the extremism has taken me into the world of porn. But yeah, my search history was like, I was like, on my work computer. Ooh.
Yeah, your computer's cooked, man. That's
yeah. Yeah, no wonder I got laid off.
Yeah, your computer needs Jesus now. Yeah. Incognito tab. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So let's come back to it. Come back to this article. So as Osama tells it, his first stint was the pastor. I'm reading again from your article. His first stint was as a religious leader, or his first stint as a religious leader was as a youth pastor in a Gospel Life community in Walnut, Los Angeles County, just 8 miles from Pomona. Shout out Pomona. And then he got his formal training at Potter's House of Ministry, an international Pentecostal religious organization that has faced multiple accusations of being a cult. He says that on the Ecclesia website that while serving as a pastor for a Christian club at a grad school, he encountered satanic imagery scrawled on whiteboards and was ultimately kicked off campus for proselytizing.
I was desperate to know more about it. I was desperate. This and the porn, I was desperate to know more about it, but I couldn't get him to talk to me. But
hold on, kicked off of, where did he go to school?
Well, it wasn't his school. He was invited to pass, like a Christian club at this grad school invited him to be a pastor. I don't know what this Christian club was or what, but then he encountered satanic imagery on whiteboards, presumably where they were meeting, and was kicked off. I agree that there are holes in this narrative. Like, I would have loved to figure out kind of what's going on there, but
there are some pretty serious holes there. I will, if I may, the biggest one that I find is that now if this was a private school, maybe the math changes a little bit, but saying that you were kicked off of campus for proselytizing. So okay, I'm going to assume that he was at a school in Southern California, and because of where he was at the time, right? He was in Southern California. So unless this man was traveling out of state and rules are different, I don't know. But I went to UC Riverside, and I'm a little younger than him, not that much younger than him, but I'm a little younger than him. But of an appropriate age where maybe he would have been old enough to come to a school like where I was at. Who knows? Maybe he came to my school at some point. Maybe he's talking about my school. I don't know. I can tell you what would happen. At UC Riverside, we would have regularly dudes, and it was always dudes, come through with these big signs and talking about how we're all going to hell and abortion is wrong and any number of things. And sometimes they would have a little microphone. Sometimes they would just talk. But they were allowed to walk on campus. Nobody could stop them. And sometimes they would get in discussions with people. Sometimes people would hear them out. Sometimes people would like yell at them, argue with them. There'd be a big crowd around them, and for what it's worth, I suppose respect where it's due. They would deal with it when people would not be happy that they were there, but we couldn't. No campus authority ever said you can't be here because, again, we're talking about public universities here. So if it's a private university, it may be different. They couldn't kick you off. You're allowed to be there. Public space.
So
and
unless
so unless
they're being
really
unless you're being very disruptive.
Yeah, you had to
be very, very disruptive. Yeah,
you're not proselytizing. If you're truly getting kicked off a campus, it's not because you're telling people. You're not spreading the good word. You're like the security police think you're harassing people.
This is really interesting context. I had no idea about that.
That is the only way to get kicked off of a campus. Yeah, that is the only way to get kicked off a public campus. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so don't follow what I say, but I have seen some things on the public campus. PETA pulled up with horrific pictures on big old poster boards, and a lot of people didn't like it. Some people did, but a lot of people didn't like it.
I was like, who the fuck is PETA? Sorry.
Oh no, not PETA. PETA. Yeah, people against the people.
No. I know. I just
the ethical treatment of animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. PETA. PETA.
Yeah.
Showed up, and but again, these are. A campus is traditionally, and I believe as it should be, a place for exchange of ideas, a place for protest. All these things can happen. And so you have to be doing something really, really out of pocket to be kicked off of campus. This isn't just something that, man, hey, like the cops don't show up and say, hey, buddy, I'm officer and so, and I don't like God. Get off of campus before I arrest you. It ain't gonna happen. You did something.
Okay.
If it happened.
Okay.
My analysis.
That's really good. Yeah. Okay. That's no. That is key. That's key context. Because then it's like, the big gap I have is like, how do you then get into the far right? Like where, like what's your through line? And that I don't have that. I do think it's funny that he was following around Patriot Prayer, because praying patriots is this new thing. It's like
let's talk about it a little bit. Patriot Prayer, I feel like in a weird way, Patriot Prayer was kind of on the front end of this.
100%. Look, you're absolutely right. They were doing it. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So to back up here, Patriot Prayer was a group headed by this guy named Joey Gibson, who I met a number of times. I actually spent better of a part of a few days with him. And my impression of him, because I reported on him twice. My impression of him was there wasn't a whole lot there. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of thought, really. And then I made two pieces. No, actually, one piece never aired because Hurricane Harvey, I want to say, happened, and that superseded everything that we'd made. And it was fine. I wrote an article, but a piece didn't come out. And yeah, an article. I think that was my first time getting tear gassed. Hey, so this is 2016. Yeah, good times. The second one was I saw kind of their move, and this was in Portland. Their move really clearly was there would be leftist protesters who widely outnumbered the far right people who would show up. They would go over to the leftists, find somebody who would hit them. Like they would legitimately just walk over to the other side of the street, and the cops were doing their absolute damnedest to keep everybody separated, usually pretty successfully. Keep everybody separated. Leftists over here, and a smaller group of people who often weren't from the town, who'd like caravan down to kind of harass. Mm-hmm. They'd somehow get across the street and just start provoking people until somebody eventually, and we got it on camera, somebody eventually like smacked his hat off of his head, like hit the bill of his head, and like the hat fell off. And he kind of went like this and said, "Oh man, these violent leftists," or whatever. And then everybody got all riled up. Cops see a bunch of activity and start throwing tear gas over at, running over to try to, see what's happening over on the side where the leftists are. And Joey Gibson, we have it on camera. He's like, "Yeah, we did it." It's like, bro, okay, that's the formula. I understand now what you do. You're here, you provoke. Not everybody's going to trip. A lot of people are going to look at you and say, "Buddy, leave." But there's going to be some dude, bro, who, is real excited about his, he had his first day at the MMA gym, and he's gonna smack you. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. And then, again, you have cover. You have shown that the leftists are violent. Congratulations. But Joey was interesting in that he would lead prayers, patriot prayer. And not everybody was doing this. And a lot of people there, you could tell they weren't really about all this God stuff. They were really just in there. They kind of wanted to mix it up. Joey wanted to talk about God.
He was like really one of the first ones to do this. You're totally right. And this alliance between the Proud Boys and the Patriot Prayer, especially like in the Pacific Northwest, like that was like a real thing that was happening. But still, I think you're right that there wasn't so much. It was like a separation. Like the Proud Boys like didn't so much seem to care what he was saying. It was like more like they preferred the strength in numbers, but they weren't kind of latching onto this rhetoric. But that, I think that's changed over time.
Yeah, I mean, how interesting how things have moved on. Where are we? Oh, okay. Also, they traveled. Or somebody traveled to San Diego for a so-called patriot picnic. You mentioned here that he denies being a Proud Boy himself. What is the connection? So he says he's not a Proud Boy, but you have a qualifier to that.
Yeah, I mean, his links to the Proud Boys like cannot be like overstated, understated. The links are very clear, basically. Mm-hmm. Like he has been hanging out with Proud Boys for a long time. He is in a secret planning chat with Proud Boys. He's telling Proud Boys, "Hey guys, don't use your favorite slogans. We've got to, kind of a important guest coming. Let's kind of let's be good." He is regularly sharing fundraisers for jailed Proud Boys. He's like, "How are our boys doing? Oh yeah, Enrique is looking, we're worried about him." He's all in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's propaganda on his socials. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I believe this is, here's a conversation where somebody is saying that they have to be strategic. And he's saying, the pastor is saying, we should treat this as a military operation. I'm not calling for violence. I'm just saying this is spiritual warfare. Interesting use of phrase. Where is this happening? This is happening outside Los Angeles School District headquarters.
Yeah, 100%.
My man's really in my front yard. Yeah. So kind of a back and forth, not publicly endorsing violence, but certainly in the same conversation with it.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and I think the end of it, really,
yeah.
The end of it really is about like how he is another like kind of key role that people like this pastor play, and there's many others like him around the country, like in these sort of like local ecosystems involving where you have like fringe Proud Boys, fringe actors, extremists, and then you have like fringe people in politics who are making inroads into the mainstream and like building connections with people like Mike Lindell or Mike Flynn, which, they're fringe, but they've also got massive platforms. They know a lot of people.
Mike Lindell, of course, being the My Pillow CEO.
Yeah, of course. Who's like, who's, yeah, exactly. And so I think that the role that Ormaz is playing, because he keeps his hands clean mostly, like he doesn't get into fights. He says he's not a Proud Boy, but he acts as a bridge basically, between where he can connect the Proud Boys to the fringes of the politics. And so that then you have this kind of, you have this ecosystem where everyone's kind of connected. But because he has a foot in both worlds, that's important. And it's more important going forwards because he's getting involved now in all these election efforts, right? So there's like the looking forward, like his whole thing now is like, election fraud and, keep our elections safe.
Right.
And he's looking into kind of signing up to go poll watching and all that stuff. Like, who are his friends? They're Proud Boys. And so this is the problem with people like him, is that like they're acting as a bridge and kind of drawing extremists into the mainstream, right? Or drawing the fringes into the mainstream into the fringes, whichever one you want to think about.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I think a bridge is a good way to put it. And this is what you mentioned at the end, is that this is the very end of your article here. Local left-wing activists may think of him still as a Proud Boy, as the Proud Boys pastor, but he's trying to go mainstream. Or it appears, we should say, that we can't describe intent here. It appears that he's trying to go mainstream, but also it seems like there's some success there, right? Listen, your average Proud Boy dude isn't necessarily going to get to hang out with the My Pillow CEO. Like, didn't necessarily want to hang out with you. If you're able to get access to this sort of thing, you're able to align yourself with these sorts of people. That does signal, at the very least, or suggest at the very least, that you have access to more and more mainstream audiences. And if you do that, you're also able to bring some of your buddies along with you.
Exactly.
Because you weren't able to speak to him directly, unfortunately, which is always the best. Ask, hey, man, look, I'm reading all this stuff about you. I want to know what your take is on it personally. Please speak to me personally. So any misconceptions I have, I can put them to rest. This is the purpose of interviewing somebody. Weren't able to do that, but it sounds like you did your damnedest, because, man, you went through the trenches to try to talk to this cat, and it didn't happen.
And I had prepared myself. And to be likable. I was like, I think I'm going to... And people I've spoken to, like, protesters, leftist protesters, so that he's always been very polite to them, to their face. I prepared to kind of steel myself against him being likable and to kind of like see past that a little bit. So, he could have had a nice write-up, but...
Opportunity missed. Look, you could have been immortalized in the final thing written on Vice.com ever. Missed opportunity, my man. You out here hanging out. Look, you out here trying to get a MyPillow discount code. Go to mypillow.com and write in Dexter for a 40% discount. No, that's not a thing. Don't do that. You're not gonna get. Yo, can you imagine if that's what I become? I'm doing like MyPillow sponsorships. Is that what we're gonna do? Tess, please save us.
I mean, it's lucrative, clearly.
Yo, next stop is Raid Shadow Legends and Athletic Greens, and MyPillow is what's going to pay the bills for me. Oh my God, this is depressing. Shout out to journalism in the United States right now. Anyway, Tess, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me on.
This. Of course. Legitimate. And what y'all don't realize is we planned this like 2 weeks ago, because you told me you were working on this piece, and I said, all right.
Yeah.
2 weeks, we're going to have you on. We did not know this would be the circumstances under which this conversation would happen, but I'm so happy we are able to make this happen.
Tess, me as well. It's great. It's great to be on great. Your show is great. Really happy that you're keeping it going. Thrilled.
Listen, if people like you keep coming through as a guest, I will keep doing it, and people keep watching it. But yeah, Tess, for real, anytime you got something you want to come on and talk about, thank you so much for really getting into it with me. But anytime you ever want to do that again, door is very much open.
Okay, awesome.
Hell yeah. All right, everyone, please,
All
you
right.
see Tess's info over there in her little lower third. Please go follow her, watch what she's doing, and hopefully we will see her back here really soon.
All right. Bye, Dexter. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Whoo! What up, y'all?